Hi everybody, it's Sid from Cool Moviegram, your source for everything about cool movies. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and check out my other content. And also, while you're at it, let me know what you think. I mean, any improvements, if there is anything that I can do to get more of you people to interact. This is another video which is part of the Asian Cinema Circle. Now, the Asian Cinema Circle is a collective of like-minded YouTubers who talk about film, or particularly martial arts movie or Hong Kong movies, or even Asian cinema in general. We all just seem to love that stuff, and we just kind of like created like a kind of support group or a network. It's kind of like a kung fu movie YouTuber version of the Avengers. Yeah, we like also all that, like that kind of stuff, and we tend to do these kind of videos that we do as a collective. We have our own individual takes on it and see how they fare. Members of the Asian Cinema Circle to date are Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society, aka Mr. Will I'ma Steal Your Girl Gish, Hong Kong Blu-rays, aka Hong Kong and Beyond, as they're going from now on, JCon Film, A Touch of Film, Caleb's Kung Fu Cinema, Martial Arts Film Fanatic, The Fanatical Dragon, Them's Fighting Words, Martial Arts Theatre 3000, Film Fan Dojo, Flip Otaku, and Amplit Reviews, and also myself. Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely please do go and check out these channels. I'm going to put the link to their vids on this actual on the description of this video, so you can actually check out their videos for this kind of collaborative effort that we've done. And today it's a subject matter which I could talk for hours about this stuff, but of course I won't be talking for hours because I don't think I have that much time to converse. Either battery or adulting gets in the way. Yeah, today is the day we're going to be discussing how did I get into kung fu movies or martial arts cinema in general. Yeah, well, okay, let's just I'm gonna have to rewind it back to the start of the 90s. I think I was around about 6 or 7. Yeah, I was about 6 going on 7, so really early 90s. Giving away my age there. Okay, as a young boy, I remember my uncle, who was slightly much younger than my mom, but he was my mom's youngest brother. He was really into his kung fu movies, and he was really into Bruce Lee. And he was telling me how awesome Bruce Lee was. And me being a young, impressionable young kid, didn't know who Bruce Lee was, and I didn't know what the hell kung fu even was as well. And he kind of always used to show me these magazines that he had, you know, discussing Bruce Lee and all. And then one of the days I went to his house, and he had actually taped a movie called Enter the Dragon. Yeah, this was my introduction into martial arts cinema itself, and boy oh boy, for me as a young kid, what an introduction that was. I thought this was like the most incredible thing that my young mind, or my young eyes had ever seen, and anything that I've comprehended. And I thought, what the hell was this? What did I just see? And yeah, of course, I had also, you know, was introduced to other Bruce Lee movies, such as Fist of Fury and the others. But this, of course, this was what kind of like really, these two movies were the movies that more or less sold me on who Bruce Lee was. I thought this guy is absolutely incredible. And at the same time, I had also been introduced to a certain Mr. Jean-Claude Van Damme with Bloodsport. And back then, I thought, this is just absolutely incredible. I mean, I was still pretty young, you know, below the age of 10, still kind of like within that space of like just kind of really formative years. and that kind of like just it developed a taste of of movies for me, and then that kind of like got me into watching all of the other Bruce Lee films as well. And back then we used to have the VHSs in the UK. They were edited to hell. Apparently, the censorships from 1986 onwards, they removed any scenes, including the nunchucks. They took them, they took them out of the Bruce Lee films. So we used to have a bunch of Bruce Lee movies where, there were sections of the movies that were missing because they had a nunchucks in them, a nunchuck sequence in them. So the only one that was ever seen unedited was probably The Big Boss, but then except for the saw chopping the head, which unfortunately is not available anywhere. I mean, that's been censored out of everywhere. And then, thanks to that same uncle, I was also introduced to another film, which he had actually rented from the video library. Yeah, this is back in the day when you used to be able to rent videos to, from the shop, some VHSs. And it was a little known film called Drunken Master. And after this is what kind of like got me into Jackie Chan. And I was thinking, oh, this guy is absolutely incredible. This was like literally one of the films that kind of really kind of put me on to, wow. I would say this all kind of leaded into a different kind of a gateway for me. Into kind of like discovering just this, kind of cinematic excellence or just absolute awesomeness that I've never heard of before. And also, I got introduced to Police Story Part 1 and Part 2 at a young age. I remember the first one was a Palace Video release, and the second one was a Imperial Entertainment release. And I thought, wow, and this guy's got loads of movies. I mean, Bruce Lee on the had only had 4.5 or 4 and maybe 1/4 of the movie, whereas Jackie Chan had countless films, and I thought, wow, this guy is absolutely awesome. And that kind of like also I was introduced to his other movies. His other movies being Project A, the first one initially, definitely that was for me my big kind of like revelation. This, I would say, hands down, the original Project A is possibly my favorite Jackie Chan film out of the lot. It's the one that whenever I revisit, I just think it's just still a very effective action comedy blended with like martial arts and great stunts, and it's just awesome. It's just awesomeness, and also was kind of put on to this movie here, Wheels on Meals. Again, VPD, Imperial Entertainment releasing it once again, and I thought, this was something that I've just never seen like before. I thought this was like, Jackie Chan's kind of like, wow, he became like literally one of my all-time favorite stars, overnight. He was like literally, I would always be talking about Jackie Chan movies, regardless of any kind of movie that I could seek. And then when I got a bit older, and luckily the local video libraries that were around the vicinity of where I was living, I was able to pick up quite a few of these films that were, available on VHS. Getting into, anything that Jackie Chan had done, more or less the Golden Harvest era, and even his pre-Golden Harvest movies, and also, kind of getting tricked into, buying Jackie Chan movies or renting Jackie Chan movies just solely because his name's in it, and then maybe he was just either a supporting actor or had a very small role or a cameo, and and then also eventually I kind of had discovered documentaries, and one documentary that did kind of like really, I don't know, just had a really big impression on me was the best of the martial arts films. I remember because the cover itself on the VHS had Jackie Chan in his the Fila jumpsuit, the red one from My Lucky Stars, and that put me onto the Lucky Stars movies, and that introduced me to like more than others. And of course, I'd been introduced to, Sammo Hung and Yun Bu from Wheels on Meals and Project A. But then that kind of opened up more kind of like things. And one of the films that I really kind of like, I sought out, I really wanted to see from when I saw that documentary and kind of got my hand on, were these two, which was Duel to the Death. I haven't got the Eureka Blu-rays yet, and also Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain. And that kind of got me into a lot of swordplay films as well. I thought, this is just absolutely like otherworldly. But I kind of got into Bruce because I was already a huge Bruce Lee fan, and I'd actually started reading up a lot about Bruce Lee, reading up a lot about learning more about Jackie Chan's films, learning about Bruce Lee's philosophies and martial arts, and reading his biography, especially the one written by Bruce Thomas called Bruce Lee Fighting Spirit. That kind of like really kind of opened my eyes to to martial arts in general. And I'd actually started kind of practicing kickboxing as a young like teenager by then, and I started seeking out more Hong Kong movies. And I'd also watched, I remember on I think it was BBC One or Two, they did a Kung Fu night where they played like a documentary which kind of introduced me to Donnie Yen, to Jet Li, and other people within the Kung Fu cinema. And and I also was introduced to a little known film called The Prodigal Son. And of course, Warriors 2 was after, but Prodigal Son was the movie I saw first because it come on BBC One after Enter the Dragon. And I think I also saw Touch of Zen, I think was the third one that they put on as well. But those were the two films that kind of left like a huge mark on a huge impression on me. And I thought, wow, these movies are absolutely awesome. And then also Channel 4 had also eventually done a season of like just of Hong Kong movies where they used to either play every Friday or Saturday night. And through that, when it comes to the Kung Fu movies, I was introduced to a little known man called Jet Li. And this is the movie that I was introduced to, Once Upon a Time in China. And then when I got around to watching the sequel, which was Once Upon a Time in China Part 2, it led me on to Donnie Yen. And this is one of the first Donnie Yen movies I saw after watching him in Once Upon a Time in China 2, was In the Line of Duty. And of course, followed by the first Tiger Cage. And then much later after that I saw Tiger Cage Part 2. But then Jet Li, seeking out his other movies like Fist of Legend, but because I've already had seen Legend of Feng Sayuk, aka the Feng Sayuk movies, because they would also play on Channel 4. I saw this movie in my video library and rented it. It's just a documentary called Lethal Weapon, which is kind of a play on words with Jet Li's surname, and also his the fact that he was in Lethal Weapon 4. So yeah, this was was like an interview, kind of biography, kind of covering like Jet Li's childhood and the movies that he did. And that made me seek out like more of like Jet Li's kind of movies, including like the Shaolin Temples, Dr. Y, and everything else. And luckily I was able to kind of obtain many of his films that weren't even given actual releases in the UK as of yet. Talk like films like My Father is a Hero, Bodyguard from Beijing, New Legend of Shaolin, and loads. And I kind of became like a Jet Li nerd as well, so I kind of watched that. But then also at the same time, I had also kind of rented a film called Invincible Pole Fighter, which kind of this here, which is the 8-diagram pole fighter. Well, I had the English dub version, Invincible Pole Fighter. It was one of those films that I also kind of saw on video several times. Had an ex rental, and kind of like that kind of opened up another gateway. So I mean, I had like watched a lot of like Jet Li movies, Jackie Chan movies, the Golden Harvest. Like I was kind of like, I was a huge fan of. Anything that BPD or Imperial Entertainment was releasing, like in terms of the Hong Kong movies, I just kind of just stacked up on it. I thought, I need to watch this. As long as I'd see that, oh yeah, it had like either, any notable stars, like for example, if you had a Jackie Chan on the cover, if you had Michelle Yeoh on the cover, or Cynthia Rothrock on the cover as well, I would just absolutely kind of like, I would buy it. I would say, I'm going to get this film because I would actually either buy or rent it if I can. And and then eventually, I kind of this Invincible pole fight was more or less as a young person that kind of put me onto Shaw Brothers, because I'd always see a lot of Shaw Brothers trailers for their movies on VHSs for some Hong Kong releases from Made in Hong Kong, and they had a few of their titles like the five Venoms, Invincible Shaolin, and several others. And I just kind of like thought, okay, I need to see these movies. And by the time I was like by the age of 18, 19, I was like pretty much like surrounded by so much like kung fu movies. And at the same time, I mean, prior to that, I mean, as a younger teen, I'd actually kind of been exposed to John Woo. And I was kind of like learning about his movies and like what the stuff that he put on, thanks to channels like Bravo, which existed, and they used to play they had a season of Hong Kong movies, and they'd play films like A Chinese Ghost Story. They'd play John Woo's Chow Yun-fat kind of collaborations like The Killer, Hard Boiled, A Better Tomorrow, and A Better Tomorrow 2 and whatnot. And I kind of sort out the VHSs for them. I mean, so if it wasn't for for watching Enter the Dragon, and I wouldn't have actually known what Hong Kong cinema was, because that kind of like initially put me on the track to actually kind of like learn about like martial arts movies. I mean, for me, I mean, as a youngster, I mean, I was really into like, I thought back then I used to think Jean-Claude Van Damme is the business. He's the real deal. Then when I watched all these documentaries, and it's also another documentary that kind of really got me into a lot of the stars was this one, Cinema of Vengeance, which was by directed by Toby Russell, and I just kind of like learnt more about Hong Kong movies through this as well, and like kind of like the other side of Hong Kong cinema. And then after that, I would just say that, it kind of opened my eyes to like how fight choreography is done. And then, watching other documentaries about martial arts movies beyond that, like Top Fighter, and also like My Story and My Stunts from Jackie Chan. You kind of learn more about action choreography. And then, that kind of like literally pushed me on to more like learning about martial arts movies, how they're made, how they're filmed, and then being like a media and a media study student, and a lover of film, I kind of like started looking at the more technical aspect of the filmmaking and kind of appreciating it for more. And I mean, I like movies of all genres, really. I mean, I'm into action movies, I'm into science fiction, horror movies, dramas, comedies, you name it. I mean, I'm into quite a diverse, broad kind of diverse range of films. I just love any type of if it's a good movie, I'd watch it. But then, I don't know, it was just martial arts movies. That kind of like really kind of stuck to me. It just kind of had a really profound impact on me. And when you see a lot of these Hong Kong movies, but then when you watch like Hollywood movies, when they do martial arts movies, particularly like, for example, movies that were made like maybe during the 80s and the 90s. I mean, fair enough, okay, movies that Van Damme did were pretty good, but then when you look at, so in my opinion, I just think the choreography for Jean-Claude Van Damme movies is nowhere near the kind of like the intricacy, or even like has the rhythm or the impact that Hong Kong movies tend to have in their modern day action movies. I mean, more people talk about let's just say more people talk about the final fights of movies such as Drunken Master 2, or the fights between Jackie Chan and Benny Urquidez, the two fights from them, and also the final fight in Police Story in the shopping mall. than anyone does about the choreography from maybe the last fight in Lionheart, or the any of the fights in Bloodsport, or even Kickboxer. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, they were good movies, but it's just they weren't really on that level. I mean, Hollywood martial arts movies just weren't really cutting it when it comes to like the martial arts choreography side. Because if you look at, like, for example, even The Matrix had better choreography than Van Damme movies. I mean, is Keanu Reeves a better martial artist than Van Damme? No, hell no. Yeah, maybe Van Damme's completely better, but it's just that Yuen Woo Ping was able to actually create better fight choreography and just film fight scenes hell of a lot better than what you get in Hong Kong cinema. But you get in Hollywood. That's just a common fact. I mean, but then you'd also kind of learn more about other movies, like in Asia. For example, you watch a lot of Korean. I would watch a lot of Korean movies, and you kind of see like the fight choreography in some of them. I mean, films such as Arahan, City of Violence. Even like the fight scene in Old Boy was pretty good, even though it's not a martial arts movie. But then other kind of like Korean movies, like Fighter in the Wind is another great kind of like a fictionalized biopic of Mas Oyama, who was the founder of Kyokushin Karate. Um, and There's just several others that you start learning more about. Then you watch Indonesian cinema, which had stars like Iko Uwais, Joe Taslim, and Yaya Ruhian. And so you watch movies like Marantau, or aka Marantau Warrior, or The Raid 1 and 2, so on and so forth. That kind of like opens another gateway for fans. And then also you learn more about like Thai cinema, like for example their hard-hitting impacts. Like for example, On Back was the first Thai martial arts movie I saw, and I thought that was great. But then when you watch like behind the scenes documentaries and interviews with like Tony Jaa when they were making On Back, and he would tell like the person interviewing him how he was more or less inspired by people like Jackie Chan. I mean, Jackie Chan was like Tony Jaa's hero growing up, and he always wanted to kind of like make movies that that was similar to Jackie Chan, which is why a lot of the time he was able to he did a lot of the stunts that he did was that he'd do them without wires, he'd do them without any CGI or anything else, kind of like any sort of camera trickery. And I'd also try and do them at like really fast speed. I mean, Hong Kong cinema is known for undercranking, where they kind of like film at a slower rate, where it makes the action seem a bit more faster and impactful. Whereas Tony Jaa thought that's how they actually shoot the fight scene. I mean, that's the speed that they're going. I mean, they do fight fast, but it makes the cameras are slightly undercranked. Just it kind of like moves a lot quicker. That's what he would thought when he saw like the movies growing up. So when they would actually shoot the films themselves, they would say like, oh, this is how we want to make it look like, and they would always refer back to Jackie Chan movies. And this was really kind of like inspirational to me. I mean, even as a youngster, when I started learning martial arts, and I kind of like these were the films that kind of like really kind of had that impact on me, that I want to kind of learn. There's that level of martial arts that a person can get to. Nowhere near it, no, but it kind of taught that it has that message. I mean, martial arts movies have that message where stand up for what you believe in, and stand up for what is right, and just be an all-around good person. I mean, if you need to kick ass, you need to kick ass, but you don't go out looking for trouble. But this is it though. It kind of like this. If it wasn't for movies that I kind of watched like this, like martial arts cinema itself, I would not be the person that I am today. I mean, I probably wouldn't have the personality that the fact that it taught me a lot about discipline, self-control, and just trying to look after myself, and just try to be a better person at the same time. But then I just love these movies. I mean, some people might kind of say, oh, it's not realistic, but then that's the movie business. Why do you think they call it the dream factory? Because movies are like a dream. You can make a movie however you want. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie. It doesn't have to be realistic. And that's the same thing about martial arts movies. I mean, I don't want to kind of like, if I want to see realistic martial arts, I'd watch MMA or actual tournament fighting, because when I want to watch a movie, I want to watch movies, stuff that you don't see happening in real life a lot of the time. So which kind of like, that's where fight choreography comes in. It makes the film just look a lot more grander, more impactful, and just hell of a lot more entertaining. I mean, that's why we watch them, right? I mean, we know that this is not how real fights go down. Real fights do not go down like that. If you've ever been in a street fight, I mean, you can get hit. You'll just last a few seconds. That's it, and you're out of breath a lot of the time. Whereas in a movie fight, it just kind of goes on for maybe a good few minutes, and you see, presenting all these techniques and God knows what, and that's where it kind of changes. But that's what we love about these films. It's just kind of like you'd see the effort that's put into these movies when you see like documentaries, behind the scenes footage, and these guys are absolute like beasts. And I would say that's what kind of like got me into it. And even like when seeing people like Jackie Chan train, or Bruce Lee, kind of like the kind of effort that he used to put into it. And I would say partly even the Rocky films, which I'd watched when I was young, and that kind of like put me in the whole mindset of thinking that I would love to kind of like train and get into good shape. Well, between me and you, I haven't really been to the gym in a while, so just been busy with other things, but that's just life for you. But yeah, this is what kind of like, this is how I got started in the in kung fu cinema. This is like martial arts movies. This is what kind of got me into it. But when you get exposed to it just takes that one film, and I think anyone would actually become a fan, because you realize that there's a back catalogue of whole other type of films. When you learn about the main guys like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and even then now is Donnie Yen, and you look at you kind of like want to explore their back catalogue. But then when you kind of get a whiff of the Shaw Brothers, then you start learning more about, like, for example, other stars from Shaw Brothers. I mean, of course, it's Shaw Temper. I'm going to have a Shaw Temper special up soon, and I'm also going to do another action movie countdown thing as well. But you kind of learn this, you get into more of the Shaw Brothers movies, like for example T Lung, Chen Kon Tai's movies, David Chang, and of course the late great Jimmy Wang Yu. It just kind of, it will always be there, because there's always going to be a bunch of martial arts movies or kung fu movies that I've never seen before. And thanks to the readily available kind of like physical media that we have from some of these great boutique labels like 88 Films, Eureka, Arrow, and so on and so forth, you're able to kind of like, you're able to explore more. You could learn more about these movies, and and also about these stars, and like they have like a very extensive and very colorful, bright, exciting filmography. And every time there's always going to be like a new legion of fans coming through. And luckily, the one thing I would have to say is that, like, unlike the metal community, which is very cynical and such, or like when this whole Stranger Things fiasco about Master of Puppets being used and how they were kind of like literally trying to gatekeep. Luckily, the martial arts community is nothing like that. So when younger people are kind of like drawn towards like the kung fu cinema, or like Hong Kong cinema itself, or action movies from Hong Kong or the East, I mean, the community, from my experience, is more to be like, is more, hey, you need to see this. We start kind of saying, okay, yeah, you want to watch these movies? Come with us. These are the movies that you would need to watch. Check this one out. Check that one out. And of course, you kind of learn more about these films, and by watching, like, you talk to people, and they kind of like say, yeah, you need to really check this one out. It's awesome. Or, oh, how would you rate a certain title? Like, is it good? Is it bad? Please let me know. And then, it kind of builds onto that. And then your knowledge of the films and everything, and you learn about the names of the directors, the stars, and, certain kind of like studios and whatnot. It just kind of opened up a whole new world. And, you just kind of expand your knowledge. You learn more about Hong Kong cinema. You learn about who Lau Kar Leung is, who Chang Sheh is, Sammo Hung, Corey Yun, all these different names that kind of come up. The Peking Opera lot, Shaw Brothers, Golden Harvest, it's just, and then you learn about the seasonal films, the kind of like shortish kind of run, and also, you learn about the more, obscure indie martial arts movies that were kung fu movies that were made. Like, for example, you learn about like Carter Wong, you've got the Joseph Cole movies. Um, there's always going to be a plethora of knowledge. I mean, some of the films are available are to watch for free on YouTube with ads on certain channels, and some are available to watch on like on DVD, Blu-ray, and even on Netflix or Amazon Prime. There's always going to be some sort of way you'll be able to access these films, and there's the community is very welcoming. And the fact is that, once you start watching it movies, you could always kind of like talk to people. So, we watch it, and then that's how we kind of get involved. That's how everyone gets involved. When you start kind of like building, find out that there's a huge community of these people who like the same stuff that you're kind of getting into, that you're interested in. They will actually help you. They'll tell you what to watch and what to kind of avoid. And yeah, that's where it kind of builds up. And then because, it kind of opens up a hell of a lot more. I mean, let's just say, that whole kind of like the kind of the Van Damme and the Steven Seagal type of movies, they just kind of like pale in comparison. And you learn about Hong Kong martial arts cinema. It's just like, that's on another level. The level of fight choreography, the level of like the direction, and just the way that they treat their films. When you watch them in like when they're being restored, and you watch them in like in really pristine good prints, like for example companies like Eureka and 88 and Arrow are kind of like doing at the moment. You kind of see that these films weren't really schlocky kind of like B-grade type of films that they were kind of made out to be by the West. Which is why they had this impression of like anyone who is like an action martial arts star goes straight to video. Which unfortunately is the case. That's what Hollywood tends to do. Otherwise, a star like Scott Adkins would definitely have been like a leading man in like many theatrical released films. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Which it's criminal. But yeah, you got a Brummy fighting for you, Scott. You know what I mean? Put him in the movies. Make him Johnny Cage into Mortal Kombat 2. Cast him as Johnny Cage. Definitely. Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. That's how I kind of got into like into kung fu movies and into martial arts cinema, and that kind of led on to kind of like me down a rabbit hole of Hong Kong cinema. You kind of learn more about those films, and then you kind of it becomes an obsession. Then you're thinking any kind of like physical media release of these films that you find, you think, I need to obtain it. I need to obtain it. And if you're married, then, you got to be careful, do it in small doses, not too much. One by one, your collection will grow. But then only when they start doing limited edition releases, that's when you're screwed. Yeah, well, that was my it's been well over half an hour now I've been talking about these things, and yeah, that's how I got into kung fu movies. And be sure to check out my Instagram, check out the other videos that are going to be in the description, and subscribe to their channels and subscribe to mine too. So yeah, I'll catch you on my next video. Take care and look after yourselves, people.